we've identified 4 core principles to help groups run well. I like to call these the bumpers and the gutters. You remember when you were a kid and they blew up those blue things in the side to make sure you hit some pins at the end? Well, these are 4 things that we've identified that'll help us make sure that we're accomplishing our goals, accomplishing our vision to make friends, follow Jesus, and make a difference. The first one is to be consistent. And what we mean by that is we really encourage groups to meet weekly. You know, we found that's the best rhythm for people to get to know one another. If there's that consistent weekly meeting. You know, we have these breaks built in between our small group semesters. So a group that meets weekly actually meets about 2/3 of the year. A group that meets every other week, because of the semesters, would actually only meet 17 times throughout the year. And I know 17 might sound like a lot, but when you think about an entire year, 17 times you're probably not going to get to know those people nearly as well as if you commit to that weekly rhythm during the semester. So we really encourage groups to meet weekly. The second core principle is to be open, to welcome new people into your group. Why is it important that we be open? Well, there's 2 reasons for this. You know, the first reason is a very practical one. God has blessed Eastside with a lot of new folks in recent years, and they need a place to belong. They need a place to find community. You know, we either came and somebody created a place for us to find community, and that was a key part of our experience, or we came and we had trouble finding community, and so we really understand, hey, that's important. That's maybe why you're leading a group now. If you did have some trouble, you're like, I want to start this thing so others can find community. Just want to make sure that we're continuing to create new places for people to find community. The second reason for a group to remain open is that there's been studies that have actually shown that groups that remain open to new people joining are healthier in the long term than groups that close themselves to new people. You know, I don't know exactly why this is, but I have this hunch, is that when you have a group of people and they're closed and no one new is welcome, they kind of become ingrown and cliquish. And it doesn't happen right away, but over time they become so self-centered and self-focused, it's actually not a healthy community any longer. So you might think like, well, if I open my group up to new people, are people still gonna feel comfortable? Are they gonna be willing to share? It might take them a couple of weeks to get back to that place, but yes, a healthy community can assimilate a new person pretty quickly. And the truth is, if somebody's got something really personal they need to talk about, they'll share it with someone else in the group outside of the group meeting if it's that important that they're able to talk about it that urgently. So be consistent, be open. Our third core principle is to be reproducing. Great leaders develop other leaders. If you're not developing other leaders, you might be an okay leader, you might be an average leader, maybe even a little above average leader, but you're certainly not a great leader. The truth is that there's only so many people that we can lead, only so many people that we can influence personally, right? Like I can lead the 8 or 10 or 12 or 15 or maybe even 20 people who might come to my house for a small group, but I can't lead 40 or 100. I don't have that time, I don't have that relational capacity. And so if I want to make a difference, if I want to influence 100 people, I need to begin to develop other leaders who can begin to start new groups and begin to influence people themselves. And so I quickly go from having an influence on 10 to 20. And if each of us then develops another new leader, now I'm influencing 40. This isn't just a leadership principle, and it is. You can find it in leadership books. It's also a biblical principle. The Apostle Paul, who started many of the early churches, told his protege Timothy, the things that you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will be qualified to teach others also. And so what we see here is actually 4 generations of discipleship and leadership development, where Paul is investing in Timothy, who's investing in reliable people who are investing in others. And the truth is, that investment is the reason that you and I are here today. That is the way that Jesus has continued the church throughout 2,000 years, is by one person investing in another who invests in another. So, how do you do this? What does this look like practically? Well, the first thing that you want to do is involve others in running the group. Share responsibility for the tasks that need to happen to make the group run. Right? Sometimes as leaders, we don't do this, and there's usually one of 2 reasons. Either because, we're being noble and we're thinking, I just want to serve this group, I want to serve these people, I'm going to do it all myself. Or we think, if I give somebody something to do and they don't do it, it's just going to be more work to follow up with them. It's just easier if I do it myself. So there's noble reasons and less than noble reasons that we do this. But the truth is, if we don't share responsibility for running the group, we actually short circuit other people's experience in the group. You know, when someone has a role to play in a community, they begin to feel more invested. They feel like, hey, there's something that's going to be missed if I'm not here. You know, that there's not going to be somebody to lead the discussion or bring the snacks or coordinate the activity or whatever that thing is. So share those kinds of responsibilities with other people. Your job as the leader is not to do everything. It's to make sure it gets done by sharing it with others. So that's the first step, involve people. The second thing is then to introduce the concept of leadership, right? We do a training for small group leaders online. We also do it every month in Next Steps, and so you can invite them to come be a part of that. Just say like, hey, you know, if you're interested in this, you can go check this thing out. So let them know about leadership opportunities. The next step then is to identify. You want to identify a potential leader. Now, we just talked about introducing it to the whole group. Why would you identify someone? Well, the truth is that when you identify someone, when you pull them aside and you say, hey, I think you would make a good leader, and here's why, it can help them to see themselves in a little bit of a different light. You know, there are some folks out there who really they would make great leaders, but no one ever has said to them, hey, I think you can do this. I think you'd be good at this, and here's why. So identify someone you think shows some leadership potential and tell them that and tell them why you think that they have it. Now, what are you looking for in someone? Well, there's really three key things. And there's a lot of intangibles, there's a lot of different things that might make someone a good leader, but these are kind of three keys you want to make sure they have. The first thing is someone who loves Jesus, right? Like again, we're helping people to follow Jesus. They've got to be loving Jesus and pursuing Jesus in their own lives. The second thing is someone who has decent social skills. Right? Like small groups are a people thing. Leadership is a people thing. And this doesn't mean that the person is an extrovert or the life of the party, right? Like extroverts can make great leaders and they can make terrible leaders. Introverts can make great leaders and they can make terrible leaders. It's not about someone being extroverted. It's just about them having good social skills. If they can't carry on an interpersonal conversation for 5 minutes without it being awkward, that's probably not the right person to identify as a potential small group leader. And then the third thing you're looking for, someone who is engaged and committed. Because if they're engaged and committed to your group and the things that are happening there, they're probably going to be engaged and committed when they go to start their own group. But it doesn't matter how much they love Jesus or how good they are socially. You know, if you ask them to bring the snacks and they don't do it, or you ask them to facilitate the discussion and they call out at the last minute and you say, okay, how about next week? And they say yes and they call out again. Like, they're not going to have the follow through to make their own group work. So you want someone who is engaged and committed. Now, once you've identified someone, you then begin to invest in that person, to pass on what you know about leadership. You don't have to know everything that there is to know. You don't even necessarily have to know more than that person, but you can begin sharing responsibility with them and investing in them, whatever it is that you do know, whether that's a lot or a very little bit. Just help them get started off a little further down the road than you are right now. And then finally, we want to empower them. We want to empower them to lead and to go launch their own group. And sometimes this is the most difficult step because this person, we've come to rely on them. We've probably come to know them a little bit better than the other people in the group because we've been working with them pretty closely. But if we really want to make a difference, if we really want to make an impact, that's where the difference is made, when we empower them to go and launch something, to lead something themselves. And that's where the influence goes from 10 to 20 to 40 and so on. And that really leads us to our last core value, to be expectant. Be expecting God to move and be open to it when he does. You know, when God moves, sometimes that's kind of the challenging season, right? Like, it might be that somebody in your group goes through a difficult time, and by the group rallying around that person, they're drawn closer together. That might be how God is moving in your group, is leading those people to support someone. It might be that your group has come together to go hiking together, right? And some people have gotten to know each other, they've built strong relationships. What you've realized is these people really need to take an intentional next step in their faith. They need to invest in their relationship with God. And you need to transition that hiking group into some kind of a study group or a growth track group. And that might be a little difficult. Some people might be resistant. But if that's where God is leading, if that's where God is moving, that's really where the difference will be made.